James is going to talk about 100 hikes of a lifetime. And there's his meal for today. Well, fancy meal. And there's what we're reviewing, Silent Witness. And we're going to talk about network a little more because I think I should have talked about it a little more. Anyway, so let's see if I can do. There we go. That's a little bit better. And it's hard to find a place to put the camera right now because I still haven't dealt with these petunias because I wasn't sure if it was going to rain more or what. So I just.
Is it okay if I move them over a bit?
Sure thing.
There we go.
So yeah, deal with them a little later. I'm going to read a poem for you first, and this is called Alone with You on Canada Day. And I wrote it July 5th, 2025. And well, really, I wrote some of it on
July the 1st?
Yeah, and then, July the 2nd, because
Day after.
Yeah, because here they do it very strangely, and I guess other places they might do that too. But I'm from Grand Prairie, and in Grand Prairie, well, I'm not from there. I'm from the Peace Country, but my mother's in Grand Prairie now, and my sister's in Grand Prairie, and a lot of like my grandparents, when they moved off of the farm, they went to Grand Prairie, and so
it's the center there.
Yeah. So anyway, there they do Canada Day, or at least they did, in a way that made sense. They would have the fireworks ringing in Canada Day, so they'd have them on right when, or I guess June 31st, July 1st, that at midnight then, right? Just as Canada Day starts, which makes a lot of sense because you can stay up and watch the fireworks and you don't have to go to work in the morning.
Here
But
they
here,
run it from 11 to 11:20.
Here
That's
it's
not enough.
It
Doesn't
it's
give you
a
enough
Canada
time
Day.
to get 8 hours sleep.
No, here they do it as Canada Day is finishing, and it's stupid. I don't know why
Yeah,
they
it
do
is,
that.
and they've always, it seems, done it that way.
But I guess different places do it different ways, and I suppose that way you could watch Canada Day fireworks in one place and then go to another place and have fireworks again. So maybe that's kind of fun.
Yeah,
But-
there's that. The other
Yeah.
thing, you can spend all day getting tanked.
Yeah.
There was a guy behind me.
Yeah.
When the finale hit, he hit the ground. It seemed as though he'd lost consciousness or something like that. He's lying on
Well,
his back.
hopefully his friends were taking care of him.
I hope so, because they were pretty sloshed too, and I hope they turned him on his side, because people die that way.
Yeah, so here's my poem, Alone with You on Canada Day. I rushed toward the cannon blast and watched the smoke clouds drift through air. I would have stayed away that night, but I expected you'd be there. The blasting stirred me from my sleep, and so I put my sneakers on and rushed between the blasts I'd heard, concerned they'd end and you'd be gone. My focus switched from feet to air with blasts through elm limbs, though elm limbs blocked my view. Then through the limbs I saw one light and wondered if you saw it too. A second passed and it was gone, and so I hurried on ahead. I reached the field and you weren't there. I could have just stayed home in bed. Two groups were gathered sitting there to ooh and ah and cheer away. I knew nobody in the crowd, yet found a spot and chose to stay. I chose the western end zone there. I sat there waiting for the end. The minutes felt like hours to me. Why celebrate without a friend? The crowd dispersed, and so did I. I started heading home at last. On looking up, one light remained. The moon was hanging at half-mast. It kept me company that night. On my left side and up ahead, passed one lone doe who walked along to find a place to make a bed. My bed had gotten cold again, but I was glad to find it there. I drifted off to sleep again, while silent darkness filled the air. At dawn, I found you gardening. You seemed delighted that I'd gone to see you at the fireworks show, then found you gardening at dawn. You said you'd seen the fireworks too, and said there was a fireworks heart. I said I hadn't seen it, though I might have seen a little part. The light I'd seen through elm limbs was bright pink. Perhaps it was the one, the heart you'd liked and talked about, and thinking that it was fun.
It was, I didn't want to go and wake you. I didn't realize that it's that loud. Well, it woke the dogs.
Yeah, and they woke me.
So
I
didn't wanna
suppose
go and
that's what
wake you.
happened.
I had half an hour to walk from my place to there, and I did about 25 minutes. So I walked to a school that's very close to Henderson Park, and watched it from there. I didn't want to seem inconsiderate, but I guess. Oh well, didn't quite work out.
Doesn't matter. So I'm reviewing Silent Witness season 19 today, and I don't know, it's enjoyable. A little bit too politically correct for me, but there's sometimes when it surprisingly isn't, or it seems like it isn't to me. I don't know what
There
James's
was
take
one
is.
thing about terrorism there, right?
There
You
was,
thought
so
that was a little bit.
too politically correct.
It was politically correct.
Yeah, there. It was about a couple who were like a man and a woman team, a young man and woman they had a baby together. They were a married couple, and they were Muslim terrorist couple. So that episode was way too politically correct for me. And there were other instances where you had, you know, bad cops who were lying about things that happened or whatever. Like a gun was planted on a woman when she was accidentally killed, as somebody thought that she had a gun. And so, I don't know, this whole bad cops thing, it's really played out.
I'll be perfectly frank. I
enough,
worked with
hasn't it?
cops 2 years, and I wouldn't trust their statements. Their statements would be self-serving. In other words, see what I'm saying?
Okay.
But finding evidence, I don't know. Some would do it. Beating up people for fun. I know one cop. Here's the way it was put by one of his cops. Oh, that's M.
Yeah,
I won't give his
that's
name,
just
even
who
his first name.
who he is.
That's who he is.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Just beats up on people.
He kind of ran a guy into a door frame or something like that, place where I was working. This is before I started working at the cop shop.
But yeah, and then
And
there
the
was
way
a
he said it, understand, sorry, it was
common practice.
for the guy,
For the
his
guy.
standing operating procedure.
Yeah.
But when he said, "Oh, that's M," it's like it wasn't. "Oh, that's M." It's, "Oh, that's M."
Yeah,
Kinda like,
so he didn't like it.
Didn't approve of it at all.
Yeah. It's really unnecessary. I mean, people who are like police officers, they should be in control of themselves. If they're not, they're wimps, frankly. And any person who thinks they're a big tough guy and they're bullying other people or whatever, they're wimps. People with real power, they're in control of themselves. So, anyway.
I'll just finish up. I don't trust cops without the body cams on.
Yeah,
And one cop, here's what he said: "Boy, the fun days are over." Because it used to be, well, there was, it was a ride-along or something like that. He said it used to be if someone flipped you the bird, there was someone who flipped them the bird when they were in a car. That guy would pay. Guess what? If someone flips you the bird, you can't pound them out. And it should be that way for cops. Someone mouths you off, you can't beat them up. Same thing applies to cops. So I do not trust them unless they've got body cams on. But understand, when the body cam shows people exactly what happens in the case of George Floyd and other situations, people are so much of the reaction to George Floyd was just crazy denial of reality, just denying what was there to be seen on the various cameras, the
But
body
yeah,
cams,
with the
security cams.
episode with the um, Muslim terrorist couple here, they used a word like James was saying, oh, they say it's such and such, and then eventually they did use that word. Now, what was it?
Um, uh,
Something with an R. I just can't think of it right now. Radicalized?
yeah.
Yeah. So, which
Oh,
is,
they've been radicalized.
and it's like, okay, well, whenever somebody converts to Islam, the fact that they have converted to Islam, that's they've been radicalized just by
Islam
converting to Islam.
is
So,
fundamentalist Islam, which is standard Islam, is extremely radical. It's not anything like Christianity. It's a huge step backwards. Christianity was a huge step forward when it first started. I'm not talking about the Catholic Church. It's a Jewish sect. It was a Jewish sect, and it was a huge step forward as far as Jewish sects are concerned. The Quran is full of Muhammad calling people who don't answer his call to violence, to war, jihad, or whatever, or...
okay, but what I was going to say, I was going to finish the thought by
sorry.
saying the other episode on here that I mentioned about the Polish young lady who was shot and the gun was planted on her and whatever, that episode ends up a lot different than I expected it would. So I don't know if it's now politically correct to think that Polish people are bad people in Britain or something.
That's fascinating.
I'm not
because,
sure.
Yeah.
But that episode ended up way different than because I, after watching the one and thinking, oh, well, they're just doing the politically correct thing, and then watching the one with the Polish, I'm like, whoa, that didn't end up how I thought it would.
I guess they're white people now.
I don't know, maybe that's it.
It was hugely unsettling. In the space of maybe a year, they opened things up to Polish people, and I gather 1 million moved into England.
Okay,
That's
so
stunning.
It might
That's like
be,
a 2% increase.
but still, there would be a lot of people, like they're in Britain, they're dealing with like not being able to ring their church bells and stuff like that now,
From
right?
the Muslims.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how.
Still, I
strictly
don't know how they decided to, whatever.
Okay, well, the Poles are white. No. They made a huge mistake letting all those Poles in. One of the things that kind of surprised some Jews, maybe not all, was some of them went back to Poland, not so much to Germany after World War II. And they wanted to reclaim their land. Some of the ones
And it did not work out for them.
because the Poles had taken it over.
Yeah.
I'm not saying all of them. And the Jews knew they had to get out of there if they valued their health, maybe even their lives. So Poland is one of the most anti-Semitic countries in the world. Any place that's pretty well 100% Catholic is going to be severely anti-Semitic. Not like Islam, anti-Semitic, but severely anti-Semitic.
It's funny. Can you really say Semitic, anti-Semitic, though, when you talk
Judeophobic, better way to put it.
Because, anyway, so, network. Mentioning this again, I don't know, like, in this story, they're basically, the story unravels, and eventually it's, they suggest, well, there's no democracy, there's no communism, there's none of any of that anymore. There's no Russia or China or United States or anything like that. They were saying it's IBM, it's this, various corporations and businesses, right? And it's just about where the money is flowing. And I don't agree with that
Hmm.
100%. I just have to say that yes, there sometimes it just really feels like, well, living here, most citizens are just like, where it's like, especially in urban centers, you certainly feel like you're in a, it's like you're in a feedlot or something like that, and um, the we're just livestock. We're here to consume, and that's what we're meant to do. And so you eat your various foods that aren't even really foods anymore. They're just like laden with all sorts of things in here, and it's monosodium glutamate and stuff and whatever. And it's funny because I was talking with somebody at the food bank food truck thing, and she was saying, well, look, there's all these vitamins and stuff. And you can see them. There's calcium, iron, thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, folate listed on here. And so it's like, well, maybe it's actually healthy. And, but no, it's not food. So, and you just consume, and that's that. It's just you're feeding the various businesses, and really you're voting for them with your dollars, however you're spending them, however you're spending your money. But
It's not an equal vote, of course. That's how business guys talk about. Well, you got your dollar vote, yeah. Somehow or another, Pauline and I get about a $30,000 vote and votes, and idiots like Elon Musk, I don't know what it is per year for that shit, but could be $100 million a year or more. So,
all right, well, I'm putting you over to James to maybe he'll want to talk about network a little bit more, or maybe he'll just talk about the hikes of a lifetime. I'm not sure about that, but there he is.
so this radicalization thing, I want to finish up on that.
Okay, you just talk about whatever you like. You have almost 20 minutes to do it, and I'm going to try to plant some of these petunias.
So the Quran is full of accusations of hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is different in the Quran than hypocrisy in the New Testament or in Christian scripture, the New Testament. Hypocrisy in the New Testament doesn't involve shirking your duties in battle. It's insane for a religion, i.e. Islam, any religion, to talk about your duties in battle. But Muhammad in the Quran is full of that. And he's constantly talking about, a lot of people think, oh, like, I first read it, I was kind of shocked because he's calling down, he himself was not a nomadic Arab. And in the Quran, again and again and again, he calls them out because they weren't following his strictures on what to do here, there, especially on fighting, at his beck and call. So Muslims know what their duty is. They've got to fight defensive warfare if what they consider is their property, i.e. land that they've inherited or stolen. Now, the only land Muslims really have any right to, you listening folks, is part of the Arabian Peninsula. Not even the ancient Saba, which would be around Yemen, and stuff like that. That's all they have any right to. Anything else has been stolen. But they think they're defending, and that is stuff that they've stolen. And they're, according to the Quran, everyone, doesn't matter if they're male, female, young, old, child, healthy, injured, healthy, sick, whole or injured, they've got to fight whoever's threatening they see as their property. Doesn't matter if they've stolen it or not. But then there's another form of jihad, or fighting in the way of Allah. Understand, struggle, jihad, struggle in the way of Allah. There is also fighting, killing in the way of the law. They're used in parallel kind of passages. The one explains the other. People who say, oh, it's just struggle, are playing cutesy with you. They either know better or should know better. Killing in the way of Allah and struggling in the way of Allah is the same thing. And the other type of warfare, it's quite clear, it's offensive warfare. And that only able-bodied adult males have to answer the call there. And who gives the call? It's their leader. It would be Muhammad, and then his successors. Successor is Khalifa, something like that. We mispronounce it pretty severely, Caliph. Successor. Got to answer the call. So there's it. Muslims know what their duty is. They've got to answer the call. And they're hypocrites if they don't answer the call. And the vast majority are hypocrites according to that standard. Some get radicalized. In other words, they're not really radicalized. All they do is answer the call they're supposed to call. It doesn't matter if it's defensive or offensive war, they're supposed to answer. In the case of offensive warfare, in other words, taking over whatever place, it's not traditional Muslim land, they're supposed to answer the call. And that's not radicalization, that's just not being a hypocrite according to the literature. Yeah. So this idea of radicalization, it's a modern day concept. It has nothing to do with actual Islam. For Muslims, it's being a good Muslim, and the bad Muslims are not the radicals. They're the hypocrites, the ones who don't resort to battle when they're called on to do it. Yeah? So, of course, the people who were writing this script for this one TV series, Pauline was watching the one particular one, didn't have a clue about that. And they'd be all up in, almost in arms about it. Hear me say it, but yeah. Not the first time people have gotten upset by the truth. People didn't like, many people didn't like George Orwell's Animal Farm in 1984. People on the so-called left. You can't be a communist or a communist fellow traveler. Sputnik is the Russian for fellow traveler. Or someone who's just willing to put up with communists and be a left-winger, a real left-winger. The communists are so stunningly right-wing in terms of their means to gain their ends. It's shocking that people would actually consider it left-wing. It's and of course the means become the end because they never achieve the end. It's what I call communism is eternal purgatory, the purgatory of purgating the whole earth for the paradise to come, but it's never achieved. So it's just constant witch hunting and witch burning or whatever, putting bullets in the back of witches, in the back of the neck of witches, stuff like that. Network, I don't know, I saw it way back when, this idea that it's all corporate stuff. It was around there. I mean, the new industrial state. 10 minutes?
Oh, 5.
Okay. The new industrial state by a Canadian, John Kenneth Galbraith, who worked in the Kennedy administration. He was saying that the two systems, communism and capitalism, were moving towards some sort of, not quite a synthesis, but towards the same sort of thing. He was wrong. These things happen, but it was that kind of stuff was still, I suppose, in vogue. I'm not a big fan of capitalists, but you'll notice that there are all, nationalism is it's still around. Like it's, I suspect, bigger and badder than ever, pretty well, because Russia is now officially nationalist. China now is officially nationalist, and so basically those countries are Nazi. I'd call them Nazi National Socialist or Nazi Communist. It's a very sad situation the world's in, and one of the causes of that is American stupidity and Russian plotting and planning when it came to so-called independence and freedom for the third world in the late 50s and 60s, even into the 70s, mainly in the 60s. Pretty well every little regime that came out of that movement was a Nazi commie, or maybe even National Socialist Nazi. More Nazi commie. Egypt is a classic case in point. 52, 53. Nasser set up a little regime. It had a Politburo and it had a central committee. Listen to that. It's a communist organization. And of course, he was a major influence on all sorts of so-called freedom and independence movements. There was little independence involved. As soon as the oil crisis hit, so many of these crummy little countries were coming to the first world with their hands out, saying, well, we borrowed from you. Now I have to borrow more to get oil at higher prices. Pay up. Huh? No, it doesn't work out that way. Because what that would be is like the third world country would be paying a huge amount of coin to oil producing countries, OPEC countries for example, and then the first world countries would be giving that third world country, or those third world countries, like just writing off the loans. So basically what they'd be doing, the money would be going, what the first world countries would be subsidizing OPEC countries. No. So that's not independence. It's like folks with their hands out. Hey, like we got independence from you, but give us money. And it's, not every first world country was a former colonial power. France, England, Britain, you want to call it that. And Denmark, not really. Spain, not much. Holland, basically 3 countries. The rest, Germany, pay up. Huh? What's that about? Canada, pay up. Huh? What's that about? United States, pay up. Huh? What's that about? United States would only go to the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and, well, it's still part of the United States. Yeah, just ridiculous.